Sarah couldn't shake the uneasy feeling as she watched Victor chat with other neighbors at the community playground. His laughter seemed rehearsed, his gestures calculated. What troubled her most was how quickly he'd integrated himself into the neighborhood's social fabric. Just 3 months after moving in, he knew everyone's names, occupations, and, most concerning, their financial situations. "Did you know the Hendersons are thinking of selling?" Victor mentioned casually as he approached Sarah's bench. Apparently their son's college tuition is becoming a burden. Sarah hadn't known. The Hendersons had been private about their finances, yet Victor spoke as if they confided in him personally. "That's unfortunate," Sarah replied carefully. "They've been here since before I moved in." Victor nodded, his eyes scanning the neighborhood with an appraiser's gaze. Change is inevitable in desirable areas like Oakwood. Property values here are underperforming similar neighborhoods by nearly 15%. With the right leadership, we could all see significant appreciation. Before Sarah could respond, Victor's phone rang. He excused himself, but didn't walk quite far enough away. Sarah overheard fragments. "Yes, the board meeting is Thursday. Already identified the problem properties. The old bylaws give us plenty of leverage." That evening, Sarah drove past Victor's house and noticed something odd. While most homes had lived-in qualities, personal decorations, family photos visible through windows, Victor's remained oddly sterile. Perfect staging furniture sat in the living room, but nothing suggested someone actually lived there. No personal touches, no family photos. It resembled a model home more than a residence. Curiosity piqued, Sarah decided to do some research. A simple social media search revealed little about Victor Mercer. His profiles appeared recently created with minimal history, uncommon for someone his age. His claimed work history at Premier Property Management returned no significant results. It was as if Victor Mercer had materialized from nowhere. The following week, Sarah received an innocuous email from the HOA announcing a special assessment survey. The question seemed oddly invasive. "When was your last major renovation? Are you planning to stay in the neighborhood long term? Would you consider selling if offered 10% above market value?" The survey came from Victor's personal email address, rather than the official HOA account. That night, a knock at Sarah's door surprised her. It was Eleanor Jenkins, the longtime HOA president, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I needed to speak with you privately," Eleanor whispered, declining Sarah's invitation to come inside. "I'm stepping down from the board next week." Victor has been persuasive. He's brought in outside investors who purchased 3 board members' homes at premium prices. They've already moved out. "That seems unusual," Sarah said, her concern growing. "It's more than unusual," Eleanor replied, glancing over her shoulder. "Victor approached me too. When I declined his offer, he mentioned my grandson's college application to Yale and how competitive admission can be." Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. "It felt like a threat, Sarah. Now I find myself suddenly retiring due to health concerns I don't actually have." As Eleanor walked away, Sarah noticed Victor's curtains moving across the street. The streetlight caught his face as he watched them, foam pressed to his ear. Sarah locked her door that night with a new sense of unease. Something calculated was unfolding in Oakwood Estates, with Victor Mercer orchestrating every move. And somehow, she sensed her cherished home had already been marked as a target. The HOA fine notice trembled in Sarah's hand as she reread the violation. Unauthorized landscape elements detracting from neighborhood aesthetic cohesion. The attached photos show her grandmother's hand-painted garden gnome and the heritage roses she'd nurtured for years. According to the newly updated bylaws, all exterior decorative elements now required pre-approval from the Architectural Review Committee, which, conveniently, Victor had appointed himself to chair. Sarah placed the notice beside 3 others she'd received that week. Each cited different violations of bylaws that hadn't existed a month ago. Each carried a fine larger than the last. "This is strategic," she muttered, connecting the dots. The violations targeted only certain homes, primarily the older, character-filled properties like hers situated on larger lots. As Sarah walked to her car, the next morning, she noticed a sleek BMW parked outside the Wilsons' house 2 doors down. An elegant woman in a business suit was taking photos and measurements of the property. Mr. Wilson, recently widowed and in his 70s, watched helplessly from his porch. "They're saying my maple tree is a hazard," he explained when Sarah approached. "Been there 60 years without issue. But suddenly it needs to come down within 30 days or I face daily fines. I can't afford that on my fixed income. The woman handed Mr. Wilson her card. Remember, our offer to purchase remains open if maintaining the property becomes too burdensome. Sarah glimpsed the business card. Platinum Estates Acquisitions. That evening, Sarah knocked on Beth's door. As one of the few original board members still serving under Victor's presidency, Beth might have insights. Beth checked the street nervously before letting Sarah in. I can't talk long. Victor has people watching board members for loyalty issues. That sounds extreme, Sarah said, alarmed. Everything about this is extreme, Beth whispered, pulling out her tablet. Look at these meeting minutes from the executive session Victor didn't let me attend. The documents outlined a 5-year neighborhood transformation plan. Phase 1. Targeted enforcement to encourage non-conforming property sales. Phase 2. Acquisition of key properties to establish redevelopment footprint. The language was coldly efficient. There's more, Beth continued. The HOA hired a private investigation firm to compile dossiers on homeowners who might resist neighborhood improvement initiatives. They're looking for leverage, financial difficulties, family issues, professional vulnerabilities. Sarah felt a chill. Is that even legal? Victor operates in gray areas. Look at this map. They've color-coded each home. Green for acquisition ready, yellow for applying pressure, and red for priority targets requiring special handling. Sarah's home was dark red. As Beth showed her out, a car slowed in front of the house. The driver, one of the strangers who had voted for Victor, stared openly at them before driving away. The next morning, Sarah discovered all 4 of her car tires mysteriously deflated. A handwritten note under her windshield wiper read simply, "Oakwood is changing. Don't fight the inevitable." That afternoon, 3 different real estate agents knocked on her door, each claiming Sarah had contacted them about listing her home. When she checked her email, she found her address and personal information had been submitted to dozens of property buying services without her knowledge. The message was clear. Victor wasn't just changing bylaws. He was escalating to something far more personal and threatening. And Sarah's resistance had placed her squarely in its crosshairs. Sarah stared at her bank account balance in disbelief. The HOA had somehow set up automatic withdrawals for her outstanding violations, draining nearly $800 from her account overnight. When she called the bank in a panic, the representative informed her that the withdrawals were authorized through the HOA agreement she had supposedly signed digitally last month. Sarah had signed no such document. This crosses every legal boundary. Sarah fumed as she drove to the county records office. If Victor was manipulating financial documents, she needed proof before confronting him. The county clerk, a friendly woman named Doris, who had worked there for decades, greeted Sarah warmly. I was wondering when someone from Oakwood would come asking questions. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Doris lowered her voice. There's been unusual activity with your neighborhood records lately. Someone's been researching property lines, title histories, and zoning variance possibilities for most of Oakwood's original homes. Let me guess. Victor Mercer. Not him personally, but a paralegal from Platinum Development's legal team. They've been quite thorough. Sarah's research revealed something even more disturbing. Platinum had successfully executed similar neighborhood transformations in 3 other cities using the same playbook. Infiltrate the HOA, pressure vulnerable homeowners, acquire properties in a checkerboard pattern to destabilize the neighborhood cohesion, then leverage building code violations to force holdouts to sell. As Sarah drove home, she noticed survey stakes along the boundary of the neighborhood park, the one amenity that had drawn many families to Oakwood in the first place. A laminated notice announced upcoming HOA improvements, with architectural renderings showing the green space replaced by a members-only fitness center and parking structure. Sarah pulled over to read the fine print. Project financed through special assessment of $15,000 per household, payable within 60 days of approval. An elderly couple stood staring at the notice, visibly distressed. Sarah recognized them as the Millers, who had lived in Oakwood for over 30 years. We can't possibly afford this, Mrs. Miller said, her voice shaking. Not on our pension. That's the point, Sarah realized aloud. They know exactly who can't afford it. Mr. Miller nodded grimly. We received an offer on our house yesterday, significantly below market value, but with a promise to waive the special assessment if we sell quickly to their preferred buyer. Back home, Sarah found a certified letter wedged in her door. Her property tax assessment had suddenly increased by 40% due to a data correction regarding her home's square footage and premium location status. The revised tax bill would increase her mortgage payment by $600 monthly. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Having financial difficulties. Platinum Estates offers confidential, no-obligation purchase consultations for Oakwood residents. The timing couldn't be coincidence. That evening, as Sarah documented each suspicious action in her growing case file, a knock at her door startled her. Marco, her neighbor from down the street, stood on her porch looking anxious. "We need to talk somewhere private," he whispered. Victor installed surveillance cameras throughout the neighborhood yesterday. They're disguised as landscape lighting, but they're watching specific houses, including yours. Marco glanced over his shoulder before continuing. "I used to work for the district attorney's office. What's happening here isn't just unethical. It's criminal conspiracy. And we're running out of time to stop it." Sarah and Jamie worked late into the night, systematically documenting the web of connections between Victor, Platinum Estates, and the suspicious new board members. Jamie's cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable as she traced the digital footprints, linking them all. "Look at this," Jamie said, pointing to her laptop screen. "Victor Mercer isn't even his real name. His actual identity is Vincent Marola, former CFO of a real estate investment firm that faced SEC investigations 3 years ago for predatory acquisition practices." Sarah leaned closer to examine the side-by-side photos. "He changed his appearance, but that's definitely him. And here's where it gets interesting," Jamie continued, pulling up financial records. "The money flowing into the HOA Improvement Fund isn't staying there. It's being routed through 3 shell companies before landing in Platinum's acquisition account. That's textbook money laundering." As they dug deeper, a comprehensive picture emerged. Victor had orchestrated similar schemes in 4 other communities, each time vanishing before authorities caught on. The pattern always began with seemingly reasonable HOA governance that gradually evolved into systematic harassment of targeted homeowners. A notification pinged on Jamie's computer. "Someone's trying to access your mortgage records," she said, fingers flying across the keyboard. "They're spoofing your identity through the county assessor's portal." Sarah felt a chill. "Can you block them?" "Already done, but this means they're accelerating their timeline. We need to move faster." The next morning, Sarah cautiously approached City Hall, taking a circuitous route to ensure she wasn't followed. Her contact in the zoning department had agreed to meet her discreetly. "These were filed yesterday," the zoning official whispered, sliding a folder across the table. "Platinum is requesting expedited approval for comprehensive redevelopment of Oakwood Estates. They're claiming to have secured purchase agreements or options on 60% of the properties already." Sarah examined the glossy renderings with growing alarm. Where her beloved neighborhood now stood, Platinum planned a gated community of luxury townhomes and high-end retail spaces. Most shocking was the projected completion date, just 9 months away. "This approval request includes demolition permits," the official added. "They're confident enough to already have demolition contractors on retainer." On her way home, Sarah spotted an unfamiliar car parked near her house. The driver quickly looked away when she passed. Another vehicle, the same black sedan she'd seen outside Victor's house, turned down her street moments later. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Marco. "Don't go home. Meet me at the library now. They're making moves against your property today." At the library, Marco showed her photos taken by his security camera. 2 men in business suits had approached her front door with official-looking documents. When no one answered, they posted something before photographing the exterior of her home from multiple angles. "They filed an emergency condemnation request with the city," Marco explained grimly, "claiming structural issues making your home imminently dangerous based on a drive-by inspection. It's completely fraudulent, but it could temporarily bar you from entering your own property while it's under review." Sarah's hands trembled. How is this even possible? "The building inspector who signed off on it was recently hired from Victor's previous company," Marco said. "The connections run deeper than we realized. This isn't just about property anymore, Sarah. They're willing to fabricate safety issues that could make your home legally uninhabitable with no warning or due process. We're dealing with sophisticated criminals who have infiltrated multiple levels of local government." Sarah stood frozen in her driveway, watching helplessly as workers continued dismantling her property. Beyond the stump of her beloved oak tree, men in reflective vests were now removing sections of her decorative brick pathway, claiming it encroached on common area easements. When she tried to approach them, a supervisor thrust paperwork in her face authorizing the work under emergency HOA remediation protocols. Her phone rang. Her mortgage lender again. The urgent voice on the line informed her that without homeowners insurance, they were initiating accelerated repayment terms. Her monthly payment would triple effective immediately. "This can't be happening," she whispered, her financial security crumbling around her as surely as her physical property. Inside her house, Sarah found her personal sanctuary violated in a different way. Her electricity had been shut off despite her account being current. A notice from the utility company, cited as safety inspection request from the HOA claiming improper wiring posed a fire hazard. The refrigerator was already warming, her food beginning to spoil. Sarah's phone pinged with yet another alarming notification. Her bank's fraud department was requesting verification of a $22,000 wire transfer initiated from her home equity line of credit. Someone had accessed her account and attempted to drain the last of her financial resources. As darkness fell, Sarah sat in her increasingly uninhabitable home by candlelight, her laptop's battery the only source of power for communication with the outside world. The percussion of hammering started unexpectedly. Workers installing plywood across her neighbor's windows. The Hendersons had apparently surrendered to Victor's pressure, their home now marked for demolition. A text from her boss arrived. "Need to speak with you first thing tomorrow. HR involved. Very serious situation." The anonymous professional complaint was clearly moving forward, threatening the career she built over 15 years. Through her kitchen window, Sarah spotted two men photographing her backyard, their flashlights sweeping across her property. When she opened the door to confront them, they claimed to be from the city water department investigating a reported leak. Their unmarked van and lack of proper identification suggested otherwise. Sarah retreated to her bathroom, the one place without windows, to call Marco. "They're accelerating everything," she whispered. "I can't keep up with the attacks coming from every direction." "That's exactly their strategy," Marco replied grimly. "Overwhelm you with simultaneous crises until you break. Classic pressure campaign." A thunderous knocking at her front door made Sarah jump. Through the peephole, she saw two police officers standing on her porch. "Ms. Thompson, we're responding to reports of suspicious activity at this address. Your neighbors reported seeing lights moving inside what they believed to be a vacant property." "This is my home," Sarah said through the door. "I live here. We'll need to see some identification and proof of residence, Mom." When Sarah produced her driver's license, the officers exchanged glances. "Our report indicates this property was condemned this morning as uninhabitable. No occupants should be present. We'll need you to vacate immediately for your safety." "That condemnation is fraudulent," Sarah insisted, showing them her property deed. "I'm being targeted by." "Mom, we don't get involved in civil disputes," the officer interrupted. "Our orders are to secure the premises as unoccupied. You can take it up with the housing authority tomorrow, but tonight you need to find alternative accommodations." As Sarah gathered essential belongings, she noticed Victor watching from across the street, partially hidden behind his curtains. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled and raised what appeared to be a champagne glass in a mocking toast. Standing on the sidewalk as the officers placed official seals on her doors, Sarah realized the devastating truth. In less than 24 hours, Victor had succeeded in separating her from her home, her financial resources, and potentially her career. The carefully orchestrated pressure campaign had achieved its goal. She was now homeless, her resistance effectively neutralized. Or, so Victor believed. Sarah sat in Marco's guest bedroom, surrounded by laptops and documents, her temporary command center. 3 days had passed since she'd been forced from her home. But those days hadn't been spent in despair. They'd been the most productive of her life. "It's time," Jamie announced, looking up from her computer. "Everyone's in position." Sarah nodded, a calm determination replacing the panic she'd felt just days earlier. "Let's end this." Across town, the monthly HOA meeting was beginning. Victor stood confidently at the podium, unaware of what was about to unfold. His presentation outlined the exciting transformation planned for Oakwood Estates, with glossy renderings of luxury townhomes replacing the existing homes. The door opened as three unfamiliar people entered the room. One approached Victor, extending a business card. "Special Agent Rebecca Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division. This meeting is now part of an active federal investigation." Victor's smile faltered only momentarily. There must be some mistake. We're simply conducting community business. No mistake, Mr. Marola, Agent Chen replied, using his real name. We have substantial evidence of wire fraud, money laundering, document falsification, and conspiracy across multiple jurisdictions. As federal agents secured the room, Sarah entered with Marco and Jamie. The shocked faces of the remaining neighbors turned toward her. Victor's composure cracked. This is absurd. Ms. Thompson has been harassing honest board members with conspiracy theories because she refuses to maintain her property to community standards. Sarah calmly opened her laptop, connecting it to the projection system. Actually, I've been documenting crimes. For weeks, we've been working with federal authorities to build a case. The screen displayed a meticulously organized evidence board, financial trails connecting Victor to Platinum Estates, recordings of threats against homeowners, falsified documents, and testimonials from victims in other communities where Victor had operated previously. While you were busy trying to overwhelm me with attacks from every direction, Sarah continued, you failed to notice I was building a network of my own. Every fraudulent inspection, every falsified violation, every manipulated document became evidence. Agent Chen took over. Mr. Marola's pattern of using homeowners associations as vehicles for property fraud spans 5 states. What makes this case particularly compelling is the electronic trail. Ms. Thompson's team helped us follow the money directly to offshore accounts held by Platinum's executives. The room erupted in questions as neighbors began to understand the scale of manipulation they'd experienced. Outside, news vans were already arriving, tipped off by Jamie's carefully cultivated media contacts. Victor lunged for the exit, only to find it blocked by federal agents. As he was led away in handcuffs, he hissed at Sarah, you have no idea who you're dealing with. My attorneys will destroy you. Actually, Marco interjected, as a former prosecutor, I can assure you that cooperating with authorities is your only viable option. The evidence is overwhelming. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in her front yard watching as workers replanted a young oak tree where her original had stood. The court had ordered immediate restoration of damaged properties pending the larger case against Platinum Estates. Neighbors gathered around her, many still processing how close they'd come to losing their homes. Mrs. Miller hugged Sarah tightly. You saved our retirement. We can never repay you. The neighborhood saved itself, Sarah replied. Once we started communicating and sharing information, Victor's divide and conquer strategy collapsed. The newly elected HOA president, Beth, who had helped expose the scheme, approached with a stack of documents. The court-appointed receiver has restored the original bylaws. And check this out, we've been approved for designation as a historic neighborhood, which provides additional protections against predatory development. As the sun set over Oakwood Estates, neighbors lingered on Sarah's lawn, sharing stories and planning a proper community celebration. The surveillance cameras had been removed, the fraudulent lines lifted, and the peace of the neighborhood was returning. Sarah watched her neighbors with quiet satisfaction. Victor had targeted their community because he saw isolated, vulnerable homeowners. What he hadn't anticipated was that pressure could transform disconnected neighbors into something powerful, a true community, resilient against those who would exploit it for profit.